The wind howled through the alien desert, carrying dust and thunder across the wide red sky. The storm had been raging for hours, shaking tents, snapping flags, and filling the night with a sharp, restless sound inside the Therak camp. Warriors sat around a fire, their silver eyes glowing in the dark. They were laughing, drinking, and sharpening their weapons. It was a night like any other, until the gate creaked open, and silence fell like a heavy blanket. A figure stood in the storm, tall and human, his long coat torn. His face hidden under a hood soaked in rain and dust. He didn't speak. Didn't shout for shelter, he just walked. Slow and steady, step by step, into the firelight. The laughter broke again, low and cruel. "Look what the wind dragged in," one of the warriors sneered, rising from his seat. His armor shining with blue light, a lost human. Or maybe just another fool trying to play hero, the others laughed. Their sharp teeth flashing in the glow, humans were weak to them, easy to break, easy to forget. But the stranger said nothing. He only reached for the thing tied across his back. It was a long spear, cracked down the center. Its shaft blackened with ash. He walked to the center of the circle, the fire snapping between them, and without a word, he let the spear fall to the ground. It landed with a sharp, echoing crack. The head split in two. The laughter stopped. "That," one of the warriors gasped. "That's the chief's spear." The stranger finally lifted his head. His eyes cold and tired. There was a cut above his brow and mud on his cheek. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but carried through the camp. "A message," he said. No one moved, no one breathed. Even the fire seemed to lower its flame. From the largest tent, a tall Therak stepped out. His armor marked with symbols of command. His name was Koran, the second in command to the fallen chief. He stared at the spear, then at the human. "Where did you get this?" He growled. The human didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire, watching the wood collapse into red embers. Finally he said, "Your chief found what he was looking for, and it destroyed him." Koran's nostrils flared. His claws curled. "You're lying," he hissed. "Our chief was the strongest of the Therak. No human could touch him." The stranger's lips twitched. Not in a smile, but something close to pain. "Strength isn't always enough," he said. "Sometimes it's the reason you fall." The warriors began to shout. Some grabbed their weapons. The air trembled with anger. But the stranger didn't move. His calm made their fury grow stronger. His stillness felt heavier than any threat. Finally, Koran stepped forward until they stood face to face, his shadow covering the human. "If you killed him, I'll skin you alive," he said, "and hang your bones at the gates." The human's eyes lifted to meet his. The storm outside cracked with lightning. The thunder rolled through the camp. He didn't blink, didn't step back. Instead, he whispered something barely louder than the wind. "Then you'll need a lot of rope." The fire burst as a gust of wind swept through, throwing sparks across the ground. One landed on the broken spear and burned out slowly. Koran clenched his jaw, his fury shaking in his hands. But something in the stranger's voice stopped him. There was no boast, no fear, only exhaustion, and a weight that no warrior could fake. The camp was silent again, except for the sound of the wind and the faint hum of the storm. The warriors looked at one another, uneasy. They had faced human soldiers before, men who begged, who screamed, but this one was different. He looked like a man who had already faced death and didn't care if it came again. Koran narrowed his eyes. "What message?" he demanded. The stranger turned his gaze toward the dark horizon. The lightning flashed again, showing the outline of destroyed ships far beyond the dunes. "It's waiting where your chief fell," he said. "If you have the courage to see it, before anyone could stop him." He turned and began walking toward the desert. His steps slow but sure. The wind whipped his coat, throwing dust around his feet. The warriors shouted after him, but none dared follow. They stared at the broken spear still lying on the ground, the weapon of their proud leader. Now cracked and silent, Karen picked it up, his claws brushing over the splintered wood. The symbol of his chief's strength reduced to ashes. His throat tightened with rage and confusion. He looked toward the storm where the stranger had gone. Lightning flashed again, and for a moment, Koren thought he saw figures' shadows moving in the dunes. Ghosts of the past, or maybe something worse. The thunder rolled louder. The wind screamed against the cliffs, and in that moment, everyone in the camp felt the same thing. The wind had not just brought a stranger. It had brought a reckoning, and deep inside, Koren knew the real storm hadn't even started yet. The storm had passed, but its shadow still lingered over the Therok camp. The air was thick with tension, and every warrior who had laughed the night before now spoke in low voices. The broken spear lay in the center of the camp like a curse. No one dared to move it. Even the fire seemed smaller. As if afraid of the message it carried, Koren stood beside it, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the human had vanished hours ago. He could still hear the man's words in his mind. "It's waiting where your chief fell," they echoed like thunder. Heavy and full of something Koren couldn't explain, the chief's death was impossible. He told himself their leader, Varrock the Iron Fang, had crushed colonies, burned fleets, and fought human generals face to face. No human could have ended him. Yet his spear was right there, cracked and burned, a truth that couldn't be denied. When dawn came, the storm clouds drifted away, leaving behind red light across the dunes. Koren gathered his warriors, their armor still dusty, their faces pale from the sleepless night. "We go," he said, his voice low but sharp. "We find where he fell." One warrior hesitated. "Sir, what if it's a trap?" Koren's glare silenced him. "Then we kill the trap," he said coldly. They mounted their beasts, giant, scaled creatures that snorted steam, and began their journey into the wasteland. The wind whistled between the rocks, carrying the faint sound of something far away. Maybe machines, maybe ghosts, as they rode. The youngest warrior, Sar, couldn't hold back his fear. That human. He didn't look like a fighter, he said quietly. He looked like someone who's already lost everything. Koren didn't answer, but inside, he felt the same unease. He had seen brave men break. He had seen cowards hide. But never had he seen a human stand in a storm surrounded by enemies. Speak only one word and leave untouched. That was not weakness, it was something else. Something dangerous. Hours passed, the dunes grew higher. The air grew heavy with the smell of burnt metal. Soon they saw the smoke rising ahead, the battlefield. When they reached the ridge, silence fell. Below them lay a field of wreckage. Human transport ships, half buried and blackened. Their engines melted, their flags torn to shreds. Scattered among them were Therok banners too. Scorched and snapped in half, the sand was dark here. Stained with ash and blood, Koren dismounted slowly, his boots sinking into the soft ground. His claws brushed over the sand, and he felt something hard beneath it. He pulled it free, a piece of broken armor, Therok design. Carved with the Iron Fang symbol, it was real. "He's dead," Sar whispered, disbelief in his voice. Koren clenched the armor in his hand until his claws dug through the metal. Rage burned inside him. But mixed with it was confusion. "How?" he whispered. "How could this happen?" From the corner of his eye, something moved. A shadow between the wrecks. Weapons were raised instantly. Warriors spread out. But then the figure stepped forward, calm and silent. It was the human. His clothes were torn, his arm bandaged, and dried blood streaked his face, but his eyes were steady, not afraid. "Not angry, just tired. You came," he said quietly. Koren's voice cracked like a whip. "What happened here?" The human looked around, his gaze lingering on the wreckage. "War," he said simply. Your chief attacked a convoy bringing medicine for Tharuk children sick from your own plague. They didn't even have weapons, just doctors. I told him to stop. But he didn't. Laughter broke from one of the warriors. Sharp and bitter. Lies, humans don't help us. You poison and destroy. The stranger looked at him, then at the burning field. If I came to destroy, he said softly, you wouldn't be standing here. His words hit like a stone. Even Koran had no answer. He stared at the man, trying to read him, to see any sign of deceit, but all he saw was truth written in scars. The human walked closer to a pile of debris and knelt, brushing away the sand. Beneath it lay a helmet, crushed and burned. He picked it up and set it on a rock. That was your chief's, he said. He was brave. But his pride cost more lives than you'll ever count. Koran's hand went to his sword. Watch your tongue, human, he growled. But the human didn't back away. I'm not your enemy, he said. I'm your mirror. The silence that followed was deep. The only sound was the whisper of the wind across the wrecks. Finally, the human turned to leave, but before he did, he pointed at the spear strapped to Koran's back. When you're ready to understand, he said, bring that to where your children sleep. Then you'll know why I came. Then he walked away. Into the dunes again, vanishing behind a wave of wind and sand. The Tharuk warriors stood frozen. Watching until he was gone, none spoke for a long time. Sar finally said, Sir, what do we do now? Koran looked down at the crushed helmet. The armor, the blood, the sky turning dark again. He could still hear the human's calm voice echoing in his head. He gritted his teeth, his pride fighting against the strange ache in his chest. We follow, he said, his voice quiet but firm. We follow until we understand what kind of message a dead chief left behind. And as they mounted their beasts again, lightning flashed far in the distance. Not from a storm, but from something waking beneath the sand. Asterisk. The red sun was sinking low when Koran and his warriors followed the stranger's trail into the deep dunes. The air had changed, colder now, and the wind carried whispers through the canyons that sounded almost like voices. They rode in silence, their weapons ready. Every step sinking into the soft sand. The stranger's footprints were clear at first. But after a few miles they scattered, as if the storm had tried to erase him. Koran dismounted, crouched, and ran his claw along the sand. It was still warm. He's close, he muttered, his eyes narrowing against the light. Behind him, Sar shivered. Sir, why do we keep following him? He asked. The human said nothing but riddles. Maybe he's leading us into a trap. Koran didn't answer. He stared ahead where the desert opened into a valley of broken stone. Our chief is dead, he said at last, his tone low and hard. And this man carries the reason why, until I know the truth. No one turns back. They entered the valley, the rocks towering high above them. Their surfaces scarred with burn marks and bullet holes. Pieces of ships lay half buried, torn open by explosions. The smell of old fire still clung to the air. One of the warriors picked up a melted human helmet and threw it aside in disgust. But something was strange here. There were no bones, no remains. As if the desert had swallowed every fallen body whole, Sar frowned. It doesn't feel like a battlefield, he whispered. It feels like a grave that forgot who it buried. Before Koran could reply, a soft sound echoed through the rocks, a slow, rhythmic knock, metal against stone. Everyone froze, weapons raised. And then the human appeared, standing on a ridge above them, leaning on the broken spear like a walking stick. You shouldn't have come, he said, his voice carrying over the wind. This place isn't kind to ghosts. Koran's claws tightened around his weapon. You killed our chief, he shouted. You owe me an answer before you die. The human didn't flinch. Instead, he pointed behind them. Then look first, he said. The Tharuk turned, confused. And what they saw made their armor feel suddenly heavier. Beyond the rocks lay a cluster of metal crates. Half buried in the sand, some still marked with human symbols. Others stamped with the Therok emblem. Inside were medical supplies, bandages, plasma packs, vaccine tubes, and sealed cases labeled in both languages. Sar knelt, picking one up carefully, reading the faded writing. "For Therok Relief Plague Containment," he said quietly, his eyes widening. "This was meant for us?" The human's voice echoed softly. "It was a convoy of medics, not soldiers. Your chief thought it was a trap. He attacked. And when they didn't fight back, he burned everything. Even his own chance to save his people." Corrin felt the words strike like a blade to his chest. His chief, the Iron Fang, had been wrong before. Reckless maybe, but never cruel. And yet, as he looked around, the proof was right there. Crates shattered, medicines turned to dust. The human climbed down slowly. His steps dragging in the sand, he looked weak. But there was still a fire in his eyes. "I tried to stop him," he said. "I begged him to listen. But pride kills faster than bullets." Corrin bared his teeth. "You expect me to believe you?" He growled. "That our chief was a fool?" The human met his stare without fear. "Not a fool," he said. "A warrior who forgot what he was fighting for." Silence filled the canyon. The wind died down, and all that remained was the soft hum of the desert. Sar stepped closer, his voice trembling. "If what you say is true, why come here? Why bring the spear back?" The human turned his head slowly, his expression unreadable. "Because I buried him myself," he said. "And I didn't want the desert to keep his weapon." The words hung in the air like smoke. Even the hard-hearted Therok couldn't find their breath. Corrin finally spoke, his voice low, almost human in its tone. "Where?" The stranger pointed to a dark hollow at the base of the ridge. "There," he said. They followed him into the shade. And as their eyes adjusted, they saw a mound of stones. Rough but deliberate, a grave. On top of it lay a single piece of armor, the chief's chestplate. Carved with the mark of the Iron Fang, Corrin fell to one knee, his claws brushing the dirt. "He was a legend," he whispered. "And now he's just dust." The human bowed his head slightly. "Legends always become dust," he said. "But sometimes they leave something behind." He reached into his torn coat and pulled out a small object, a metal vial. Glowing faintly blue, he placed it on the stones. "This was the last vial of the medicine he destroyed," he said quietly. "I kept it because one day I thought your people might need to remember what they lost." Corrin stared at it, torn between anger and respect. He wanted to strike the man, to call him a liar. But every word carried the weight of truth. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why risk coming here alone?" The human turned away, the wind tugging at his torn coat. "Because someone had to deliver the message," he said. "And it seems you're the only one willing to listen." He began walking again. Deeper into the valley, his figure small against the endless dunes. Corrin watched him go, his hand resting on the broken spear. And for the first time, the rage inside him began to shift. Not disappearing, but changing into something he didn't understand. Sar looked up at him. "Sir?" Corrin nodded slowly, his voice a whisper. "We follow." And so they did, their shadows stretching long across the sand as the dying sun burned behind them. Following a human who carried more than a weapon, he carried the truth. That would change their tribe forever. The night grew quiet as the group followed the stranger deeper into the valley. The stars above shimmered faintly through the dust. Like tiny eyes watching their every move, the air felt colder, heavy with something ancient and unseen. Every step they took seemed to echo louder than the last. The human led them through a narrow canyon where blackened rock walls glowed faintly with old burn marks. Each scar told a story of a battle too fierce to be forgotten. The smell of rust and smoke still lived in the wind, even though years had passed since the fight. Corin's claws scraped against his armor as he walked, the weight of the broken spear across his back pressing down on him like a burden. He looked at the man ahead. The human's coat fluttered in the wind. His shoulders slumped, but his steps were steady. There was something about him that made even the bravest warrior stay silent. Finally, they reached a clearing where the desert floor turned to glass. Melted by something unimaginably hot, the reflection of the moon rippled across its surface like water. And in the center stood the ruins of a human ship. Its hull twisted, its metal bones glowing faintly from within. "This is where it happened," the human said quietly, his voice breaking the stillness. "Your chief's last stand." Corin stepped forward, his chest tight. "Tell me everything," he said. "No lies, no riddles." The human knelt, pressing his palm against the glassy ground. And the others saw faint scorch marks shaped like body shadows burned into the earth. "Your chief led a raid here," he said slowly. "My unit tried to stop him. But we were outnumbered. We didn't want to fight. We only wanted to protect what we carried." Sar frowned. "The medicine?" The man nodded. "Yes, a cure for the fever spreading through your people," he said. "It wasn't meant for soldiers. It was meant for your children, for your sick, but your chief." He didn't believe me. He looked up at them, his eyes distant, remembering. "When the first shot was fired, I saw everything fall apart. My friends, my captain, even your chief's guards. They all died for nothing. I tried to stop him. I shouted that we were here to help, but he kept coming." Corin felt something twist inside his chest. His claws dug into his palms. He didn't want to believe it. Didn't want to see his proud leader through the eyes of an enemy. But the ground itself seemed to whisper that it was true. The human's voice grew softer. "Your chief was fierce. I'll give him that. He fought like the storm itself when he reached our ship. He tore through fire and smoke to reach me. I could have shot him, but I didn't. I just stood there, holding the medicine crate." He swallowed hard, his voice trembling now. "He lifted his spear to kill me. And I remember saying, 'If you do this, your people will die.' But he didn't stop. So I did the only thing I could. I broke the spear." The silence after those words was heavier than the storm. The Tharok warriors looked at one another, disbelief in their eyes. None dared to speak. Corin's throat tightened. "You fought him with your bare hands?" The human nodded slowly. "No," he said. "I fought him with truth." He pulled a small holographic cube from his pocket and pressed a button. A blue light flickered to life, forming an image in the air, a recording. Blurry but real, it showed a battlefield of smoke and fire. And in it, the Tharok chief charging forward. Roaring with rage behind him, the human stood unarmed, hands raised, shouting something the wind almost swallowed. But then they saw the chief impale the medicine crate instead of the man. The vials bursting into flames, the liquid cure turning to ash before their eyes. And then the human lunged forward, grabbing the spear and smashing it against the wreckage. Shattering it in two, the recording ended. And the desert fell quiet again. Sar took a shaky breath. "So, he really did it," he whispered. "He destroyed the cure." The human's eyes dimmed. "He thought he was saving his people from a human trick," he said. "But he doomed them instead." Corin dropped to one knee, his claws trembling. Everything he had believed, his loyalty, his pride, his chief's glory shattered like glass. "Why show us this?" he asked quietly. "Why not let us believe he died a hero?" The man looked at him with tired eyes. "Because heroes don't lie," he said softly. "And the truth is the only thing that can stop the next war before it begins." He turned to leave, his shadow stretching across the glowing ground. "You asked for a message," he said without looking back. "This is it. Pride kills faster than any weapon in peace. Peace only begins when one side dares to listen." The Tharok warriors stood in silence as the wind blew through the canyon, carrying the man's words into the endless night. Corin lifted the broken spear from his back and looked at it again. It no longer felt like a symbol of power, it felt like a reminder, a wound carved into history. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "Maybe it's time we start listening." And as the human's figure disappeared into the moonlit dunes, something shifted inside him for the first time, a small, fragile spark of understanding. Glowing quietly against the dark. The sun was high when Koren and his warriors returned from the Valley of Glass. The heat shimmered above the dunes. But none of them spoke, not a word. They rode in silence, carrying the weight of everything they had seen. The broken spear still strapped across Koren's back, like a ghost that refused to leave. Every clang of their armor, every sound of their beasts' claws digging into the sand reminded them of their fallen chief and the truth that had shattered their pride. By the time they reached camp, the rest of the tribe had gathered to meet them. The warriors, elders, even the children, all waiting for news, expecting victory, stories of vengeance or trophies from battle. But when Koren dismounted and walked into the center of the camp, the crowd fell silent. Their eyes fell on the broken spear, and their faces changed from excitement to confusion. One elder stepped forward, his voice rough with age. "Where is the Iron Fang?" Koren's throat tightened. His claws twitched at his side. "Gone," he said quietly. Buried in the desert where pride burns hotter than the sun. The crowd erupted in disbelief. Voices shouting questions, accusations, grief, and rage. Lies. Someone screamed, "Our chief cannot die by human hands." Another spat on the ground. "What trick is this?" Koren held up the spear, silencing them all. "This is no trick," he said, his voice trembling but strong. "We saw his grave with our own eyes." The murmurs turned to angry growls. Warriors stepped closer. "Then who did it?" One demanded, "Tell us who killed him so we may avenge his name." Koren looked across their faces, his brothers, his people, and felt his chest tighten. "He was not killed by a sword," he said. "He was killed by his own rage." The camp fell still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The elder frowned. "What do you mean?" Koren's gaze hardened. "He attacked a convoy bringing medicine for our sick," he said. "A convoy that came to help us, not to fight." Gasps broke through the crowd, disbelief spreading like fire. "That cannot be true," one warrior shouted. "Humans do not help us, they destroy us." Sar stepped forward beside Koren, his young voice steady. "We saw the proof," he said. "Medical crates, half burned, still marked with our symbols." The humans were delivering a cure. More shouts erupted, some in anger, some in sorrow. But Koren raised his hand, silencing them again. "Our chief was strong," he said, "but he let hatred blind him. And that blindness killed not only him, but hundreds who could have lived." The elder's eyes watered as he whispered, "So the human came to show us this truth." Koren nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "He brought back the broken spear, not as a trophy, but as a message." The crowd murmured. Confused, uneasy, one young warrior shouted, "Then why not kill the human now and end it?" Koren turned to him sharply, his voice cutting through the air. "Because killing him will not heal what we broke," he said. "Our strength is meaningless if we keep repeating the same mistakes." His words echoed through the camp. Heavy and raw, the warriors lowered their heads, some still trembling with anger, others with shame, from behind the crowd. A faint cough rose, a small Tharok child, her skin pale, her breathing weak. Her mother held her close, whispering for help. The sound struck Koren like a blade. He took the vial the human had given him from his belt, the small container glowing faintly blue in the light. "This," he said, "was the last of the cure your chief destroyed?" Gasps filled the air. All eyes fixed on it, glowing like a piece of the sky in his palm. The elder stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Then use it," he said. "Use it to save her." Koren hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing on him. Then he knelt beside the child. his massive hands trembling as he carefully poured a single drop onto her tongue. The blue liquid shimmered and melted into her skin. For a long moment, nothing happened, then slowly. Her breathing eased, the color returned to her face, the faint light of life flickering in her eyes again. The crowd gasped, whispers spreading like wind through the tents. "It works," the human spoke truth. "The medicine is real." Koran stood, his chest rising with heavy breath. "He could have killed us," he said, "but instead, he saved us." The elder bowed his head. "Then the message is clear," he murmured. "War has made us blind." And a stranger had to open our eyes. The warriors dropped to one knee. One by one, not in fear but in understanding. Koran looked at the broken spear in his hand, the symbol of everything they once worshipped. He walked to the center of the camp and thrust it into the sand. The sound sharp and final. "This no longer stands for conquest," he said, his voice strong and steady. "From today, it stands for memory, for the day we learned that honor is not in victory, but in truth." The wind blew gently across the camp, carrying away the last ashes of pride, and as it passed, Koran could almost hear the human's voice in the breeze, quiet but certain. "Let the next message be peace." Koran looked toward the horizon, where the dunes met the light, and for the first time, he felt something strange in his heart, not rage, not loss, but hope, and somewhere far beyond the sand, a lone figure walked beneath the rising sun, his cloak whipping in the wind, leaving behind the tribe he had changed forever. The desert was quiet again. Yet the silence felt different now, not heavy with anger, but filled with a strange kind of calm. Days had passed since the truth was revealed, and the Tharak camp no longer echoed with war songs. Instead, there were murmurs of rebuilding, of healing, of questions no one had dared to ask before. Koran stood at the edge of the camp, watching the horizon where the human had vanished. Every morning, the wind rose from that same direction, carrying dust and memory. He often wondered if the man was still alive, walking toward another tribe, delivering the same message, one camp, one truth at a time. But peace did not come easily. Not to warriors who had lived and died for battle. Many still whispered in the shadows. "The human deceived us," some said. "He brought weakness into our hearts," others muttered. "The chief's death demands vengeance." Koran heard it all, and it burned inside him. He knew that the path to change was longer than any war. That night, he called a council around the central fire, the flames flickering against their faces. His armor gleamed faintly red in the light. "Our tribe cannot stay blind," he said, his voice deep. "We must see what lies beyond revenge." One of the older warriors spat into the sand. "And what lies beyond?" He growled. "Slavery to humans? Bowing to those who slaughtered our kind for centuries?" Koran didn't raise his voice, but his eyes burned. "The human we met did not come to enslave us," he said. "He came alone, unarmed, carrying a cure meant for our children, not our soldiers." The elder warrior's claws tightened around his cup. "Words mean nothing," he snapped. "The next humans will bring bullets, not medicine." Koran leaned forward, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "Then we will greet them not with weapons, but with truth," he said. "If they bring peace, we welcome them. If they bring war, then we fight with purpose, not pride." The council fell silent. None dared to speak against him now, not after what they had seen. The child who had lived, the tribe that had changed, Sar, who sat near the fire, looked up. "What if he returns?" he asked softly. "The human, what if he comes back?" Koran's expression softened. "Then I will meet him," he said, "and this time, not as an enemy." The night stretched long after that, and one by one, the council members left, their minds troubled but stirred. Later, Koran walked alone to where the broken spear still stood, planted in the sand, the symbol of the tribe's awakening. The wind whistled around it, humming like a voice whispering from another world. He knelt and touched the splintered wood, feeling the rough edges cut against his hand. "You led us through fear," he murmured to the ghost of his fallen chief. "But The next morning, the desert shimmered with a soft golden light. The wind carried the scent of cool sand and something new hope. The Tharok tribe was alive in a way it hadn't been for years. The sick were healing, the warriors were rebuilding homes instead of breaking them. And children once weak now ran through the camp laughing, their voices ringing like music through the dunes. But Koran could not rest, even as peace bloomed around him. The words of the human messenger still echoed in his mind. "You accepted truth. Now you must protect it." He stood on a high ridge overlooking the valley where the spear still stood upright. Planted deep in the sand, the wind brushed against it softly, like the whisper of a promise below. The tribe worked together, humans and Tharok side by side, for the first time in memory. A small human medical team had arrived after hearing the story of the tribe that chose peace. They came without weapons, only carrying crates of medicine and clean water. When they entered the camp, tension rippled through the crowd. Warriors gripped their blades, mothers pulled their children closer. The memories of war ran deep. Koran walked forward alone. His shadow long in the morning light, he stopped before the humans. Their leader, a woman with silver hair tied in a braid, bowed slightly. "We heard of a man who walked into your storm," she said. "He told us this place had learned something the galaxy forgot." Koran's throat tightened. "He called himself the messenger," he said. "Did he reach you?" The woman nodded. "He did," she said softly. "And he died 2 nights ago. His wounds never healed." The air froze. Even the wind seemed to stop moving. Sar stepped back, his eyes wide. "He's gone?" The woman looked down. "He asked us to deliver this," she said, handing over a small metal disc, engraved with strange human markings. "He said it was his last message." Koran took it carefully, his claws trembling as he pressed the center button. A faint blue light shimmered, forming a small holographic image above the disc. It was him, the messenger, worn and pale, but smiling faintly. His voice was soft, steady, even in death. "If you're seeing this, it means I've done my part," he said. "I never wanted to be a hero, only a reminder that peace is never born from silence. It's built, one act at a time, even if it costs everything." Koran's chest tightened. His eyes burned, though he didn't understand why. The man continued, "If you still have the spear, don't bury it, raise it. Let it stand as a sign to every traveler, every tribe, every soldier who thinks hate is strength. Let it say, 'Here, we chose another way.'" The light faded, and the disc fell silent. The tribe stood frozen, staring at the faint blue glow fading into the daylight. Koran closed his eyes, the pain heavy but proud. "He gave everything," he said quietly, "so that others could stop taking." The human woman bowed her head. "He believed in you," she said. "Said the desert would remember your name." Koran turned to the crowd, lifting the broken spear high above his head. The sun caught the cracks in the metal, making it glow like fire. "This spear once divided us," he said, his voice carrying through the camp. "But from today, it unites us." He thrust it into the ground once more, the sound echoing like thunder across the valley. The warriors around him raised their hands, palms open instead of fists, a new oath forming in their hearts. "No more wars," Koran said. "No more blind rage from this day. The Tharok will protect the weak, human or not." Sar stepped forward, his voice trembling but strong. "Then the messenger's story will live forever," he said. "And we will guard it." That night, fires burned brighter than ever before. But they were not flames of war, they were lights of celebration. Humans and Tharok shared food, laughter, and songs. Children painted symbols of peace on the tents, and old warriors spoke of the messenger as a spirit who walked between storms. Koran sat by the fire, the holographic disc beside him, watching the tribe he once led into battle now dance beneath the stars. He finally understood what the man had meant by his last words. Peace is not silence, it's courage. He looked toward the horizon, where the dunes stretched endlessly under the silver moon, and whispered, "Rest well, messenger. The storm you started has turned into a dawn." As the first light of morning rose over the desert, it touched the broken spear standing tall in the sand, no longer a weapon, but a monument, a reminder that even in a world built on war, one man's truth could change everything, and the wind, ever restless, carried a single whisper through the camp and beyond, across the endless dunes. To every corner of the world, let the next message be peace.